Even the horses are like, where did all the people go? Jail time will change a man, but oh, how I love that old pan head of mine. Thank you for being a part of the show today. We're going to talk about those things. Thank you for liking, subscribing. Thank you for your comments. All of it, I appreciate it. Even if we don't agree, it's fun. Thank you again for being a part of this. Also today, you may be funny, but are your cruise ship funny? Again, thanks for checking out the podcast for today. A place built on chaos really shouldn't have availability. That's a red flag. Now, I saw this story about the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Derby weekend having available hotel rooms. That doesn't compute to me because I grew up in the South. The Kentucky Derby is hillbilly heaven. It's much like a NASCAR race in Darlington. It gets no better. It's a period in your life where you just take your shirt off, you climb the fence, and you yell, Earnhardt! So everybody can see it. It's a thing. The Kentucky Derby is just one step above that. Everybody keeps their shirt on, unless you're in the infield. But that's different. If you want to pay for the fun tickets, that's usually where you go. Years ago, you couldn't get those. It was a lottery situation, and that may still be the case. A friend of mine has the best Kentucky Derby story ever. So she calls me. This is back in the day before we texted. This is mid-90s maybe. She called me and she says, hey, I'm going to the Kentucky Derby with my family Saturday. I grew up in the South. The Kentucky Derby is not a thing we trifle with. That is tradition, son. She said, I'm going to pay off my 4Runner. She had a 4Runner in the 90s, and it was a sick 4Runner, and it cost a lot of money. I don't know how she paid for it. She was a teacher. But she did. I'm proud of her. But she said, I'm going to pay off my truck today, and I'm going to buy myself a really nice bracelet at the Kentucky Derby. I said, okay. Good luck with all that. She called me back later on that afternoon when they got back to town at the hotel, and she said, because we didn't have cell phones. So she said, you're not going to believe this. I hit. I said, you hit what? She said, my bet hit. I said, good for you, girl. She said, I paid off the truck, and I got my bracelets. It was like a $2,000 bracelet. Good for her. Paid the truck off and everything. I was so proud of her. She's awesome. I don't know if you gamble. I don't know if you do the Derby kind of thing. I don't know if you do horse racing. I like to bet on the ponies. It's a good time. I don't do it very often, maybe once every 5-10 years or so, because there's not any really local. There may be, so don't check me on that. But if I was a horse, I wouldn't want to race in the Phoenix Sun. I'd be like, nay, take me to California where the waters. I don't do a good horse impersonation, but you get my point. Phoenix ain't the place I'd want to run. But I do like to go bet, and I don't bet much. I don't know anything about the betting. I know a little bit about it, enough to be dangerous, but not enough to smartly bet. So what I usually do is just try to figure out some wording, look at the odds, and then do a little more research online and kind of see how that horse has performed. I act like I'm doing myself some good. I'm not. I'm occupying the time between when I need to go make my bet and when I'm going to sit there and watch him run out the gate. Now, I had the opportunity to go work around Oaklawn, which was a cool track in Michigan, and I was there for a full day several times because as the radio guy, I worked with a couple of different stations, so I talked about them in multiple hour groups on each station. Watching the races was a good time, but I would bet between each, and I'm $2. Again, I'm not betting anything. I'm just having a good time. Most I ever lost at a horse track was $20. So I'm just here for the good time. I'm not going to win anything. So one of the fun things about it is you always have the story where you bet the trifecta. You just miss. It was so neat. I had a couple of those. And the horse racing thing was really, really fun. My mother liked it. A lot of my friends liked it. It was a good time. If you ever get a chance, and it's something you might be interested in, check it out. They're the most beautiful creatures when they get in that motion. It's the fastest. They just run. Their bodies are amazing. Muscles, everything in the process is just so impressive. And when they get to the end, we spend the whole day on Derby Day, as you may have done on Saturday. You watch the whole thing and you kind of feel like you know what you're doing. And then you get to watch the top of the heap. So It's a fun day. So that's why I say when I think of Derby weekend, I don't think of open hotel rooms. That's like hearing Vegas has parking. Something has shifted. This is a Super Bowl type event. Because going to events these days, it's not like it used to be. It is a really, really big deal. It's a big deal in that it's a full operation. First, you pay for the ticket, which breaks both your arm and your legs, and you have to figure that out. Then you drive, you park, you walk, you're paying pretty much in all three of these steps. Then you're paying $20 for a hot dog that looks nervous, maybe not completely finished, boiling in whatever hot dogs are. Then you sit down, you can't see because the guy in front of you's got one of them big hats, or he's just got a head the size of a watermelon, and bless him, he's probably got a big brain too, but you can't see around, over, or under it. So now you got to stand up. You realize I'm not going to do that either. So now you're watching the Jumbotron. You're at the event that you paid to attend, watching it on a big screen, which you had at your house and you could have just hit pause on. Going to an event these days, it's not the same as it used to be. I worked down at War Memorial Stadium for a couple of weeks, which is in Arkansas, and it's been around since the 1800s. And one of the great things about being around that venue, one is the history, and two, you get to see the interior, the inside, where they had safes, because back in the day they had to have money, and money was a big deal. It was cash. It wasn't, we'll put it on Visa. And then we could look at the pictures. They had a bunch of pictures inside the facility where they showed the way people dressed to come to football games when the Razorbacks played in Little Rock there at War Memorial. It was amazing. They had hats and jackets and ties, and everyone was dressed to the nines. That was a different level of what we do today. But it's still the same deal, right? It's a lot to go to a football game. And Jerry Jones was talking about this when he was building the billion-dollar stadium that is AT&T. You're competing with a recliner. You have to have at least the things that people have in their home at the game. So like for me, I like to watch the Red Zone channel. I like to know what's going on every game. It's hard to put that into that scenario. But I applaud him for trying, putting cameras in the backs of the seats and that type of stuff, because again, there's nothing worse than paying all that money and watching the Jumbotron for the whole thing. Here's part of the problem too. I miss a lot of stuff when I'm watching the game live. I lose things. I don't really hear the announcements as much. And, you know, when I'm watching football, let's face it, whether you like them or not, you've got yourself kind of used to watching the same people. You get used to Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, even if you don't really love them. You get used to Buck and Aikman. You get used to the cadence. And you don't know this guy who's going, first down, balls on the seven. It's not the same. So they're doing a lot to overcome that. But the math still gets questionable, right? I'm parking, paying for tickets, the food, the hotel if I got to live or stay there. And if I don't stay there, well, then I'm probably not going to drink any. And if I'm a drinker, that might spoil my time. I'm not, but you get my point. That can change the whole thing too. So you might have to pay for 2 nights in a hotel. But right now, I was talking to my girl the other day, and I'm like, we live so close to going to catch a Diamondbacks baseball game or a Cardinals football game. And we're both kind of the same in the end. One, we're not the huge baseball lovers, but the football game, I mean, I don't know. It seems like a lot when I can sit here and get all the views and hear the people I'm used to. Stadiums are competing with home, and home is undefeated. At least for me. It was all that I could do to keep from crying. I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison. Went to pick her up in the rain. But before I could get to the station in my pickup truck, well, she got run over by a dang old train. I don't know if you saw this over the last week, but David Allan Coe passed away at 86 years old. Which is interesting because of the complicated story that is David Allan Coe. I don't know if you've ever heard any music from David Allan Coe, but if you like country music. I'm not saying that like today's country is not country or whatever. What I'm saying is this is in the roots country music. This is a man, a guitar, a backing band, a really good voice, a legendary sound, a guy that has one of those character voices, of which there's not terribly many in my estimation. His voice was easy to pick up immediately. It didn't lay around and you weren't like, was that him or is that? You knew. Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams Jr., David Allan Coe. You knew when you heard this man sing who it was, whether it's Mona Lisa Lost Her Smile, whether it's Would You Like a Ride, Son, or whether it's some of the other music, the X-rated music. How I love that old panhead of mine. That X-rated music played heavily in my youth, not for the reasons you think. It was foul. It was disgustingly foul. But I learned something. I didn't realize people could use that medium that way, which opened my mind to, well, then maybe you could use it for comedy and maybe not what those songs were saying. But in that era, it was a pretty big deal. You had people around him. Confederate Railroad will go on and have a pretty good country career behind him. He had a troubled start. Father was a pretty abusive fella. He wound up in jail. Let's talk about the time he was born. He's born somewhere in the late 30s, so the world is a different place then. They struggled to make money. He wasn't the only one of those country guys that wound up in jail and was able to resurrect. Merle Haggard, Johnny Paycheck, David Allan Coe. He's one of those guys. Now, was he controversial? Oh, yeah. He said some things he shouldn't have. He said some things that in his life were considered acceptable, but they didn't age well. And unfortunately, it's recorded, so it doesn't change. So the view on him and his career and his addition to the industry and all of the things that were in our country music, and if you're wondering why am I talking so much about country music, it's because it's an industry that I worked in for 30 plus years. I have ACM, CMA awards. I did this for a very long time. So in that industry, I can see where his place is. His place was in that Merle Haggard area. He didn't sing like Merle, but he had a brand, and Merle was one of the early ones. Buck Owens was a guy who had a brand. Those guys were in the early stages of marketing. They didn't have social media, but they were very, very smart. They had something that appealed. For me, I think of a skating rink. Now, why do I think of a skating rink? Because Galaxy Skating Rink in Charleston, South Carolina was on Ashley Phosphate. If you've ever been to Charleston, ever lived there, you know what I'm talking about. It's around Dorchester, and then you turn down Ashley Phosphate, if I'm not mistaken, and it was sitting over there. I lived right across from the base, so that was really close. So I did all of my skating there as a kid. It was a fun time to be a kid in that era because skating was the time you got to be away from your parents. You got to do things they wouldn't let you do. We wouldn't just get a Coke. We'd have a mix all of them together like we were some kind of crazy rebels. We didn't do stupid things. We just had a good time away from our parents playing at the roller rink and learning to talk to other kids and kids of the opposite sex, and it's at that time where the music's good for skating and we're all learning it was a fun time. That being said, many, many years down the road, I worked for the local country station, and it was a big one. There was a country star coming to town, and no one wanted to go handle the introduction. And I worked at the radio station. I got voluntold. And I was excited to do it because I could remember in my mind, one, that skating rink was magical for me as a kid. And two, I love David Allan Coe music, so I'll gladly sit there. So when you get in the skating rink, it's not like I remembered. It's past its prime, way past its prime. The disco ball's barely working, but it's on. On the skating rink are chairs. At the end of where we used to have lockers and things, there's a stage set up when I walk in. My job is to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm blah, blah, blah from blah, blah, blah. And we are so glad to present or glad to welcome David Allan Coe to the stage. And then the crowd claps and we go on. Now, this one was important because it's the first one I ever did. I got a chance to do this in front of someone that, to me, was a legend in our business, and I think will always be remembered that way. But it wasn't the Grand Ole Opry. It was a skating rink. Nobody else wanted it. I was glad to do it. In fact, I got to do a bunch of those. I got to bring a lot of really cool people over the years on stage because other people didn't like the music or just didn't want to do it. But being around him that afternoon, he was a very, very hard dude to hang with. He was rough. He was rude. He was just sort of barking at you. And then I saw in the obits from one of his sons, he said he was just very hard to get to know and hard to be around. And I thought that's the same vibe I got, and that was 1990. So it's been a long time. An interesting story because people are complicated. Nothing's really as simple as it should be in humanity, right? We're not either good or bad. We're kind of working through it. We're somewhere in the middle. Some better than others, some faster than others, but some started lower on the rung of accountability than others. Life's messy, but I think in the end, what he did for the business was pretty darn cool. Now, you may be funny, but are you cruise ship funny? Comedy on land? You leave. Comedy on water? You got a roommate now. You go to the buffet, there they are. If you've never been on a cruise, I am 100% not making this up. If you find somebody at the very beginning, like in the line, or you see somebody do something stupid and you're like, that dude's weird, or I don't know, I don't want to be around them people on this cruise. You ain't never going to stop being around them people. Anywhere you go, they'll go. Go to the bathroom, they'll be beside you. It's weird how the universe works like that. By the end of the cruise, y'all are all friends and whatnot. I didn't realize the audition process. So in the process, if you're lucky enough to be selected to get an interview or an audition, if you will, you get 10 minutes. And then when you get there, my understanding is it's cut to 3. And you get 3 minutes to prove you deserve to be stuck on a boat with 4,000 people who just left the buffet eating unlimited shrimp. And that's not really a set. See, that's really more of a gut bomb waiting room. It's messy. People routinely leave right in the middle of your set mid-joke because they can. And then they go watch a dude making towel animals. You ever lost a whole show to people leaving because people are making towel animals in another room? It's degrading. But I can't argue. A towel elephant, I mean, that's pretty dope. I don't have that skill set. Problem being on a cruise ship is a lot like being on the radio. My whole career's been radio and television. And you have to be universally funny if you're going to try funny. You can't be too smart, too rude, too crude. You have to be Midwestern ant funny. In my lifetime, you could not go to the club on a Friday night and then expect to go back on your country radio station on Monday night and having said some things that's not going to ring true in church on Sunday. See what I'm saying? You couldn't get by with that in that profession. You also could not be on Given Weather while you're at the club updating and making jokes about things maybe that aren't universally funny. So that was never a lane I got to choose. What I got to choose was straight down the middle. If your mom can laugh at it and the kids in the car are not going to be offended by it, and that's kind of where we live. Sort of Shrek funny. That's about as funny as you can be on the radio. And the funny thing is, I've been working on this with my girl. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. I don't write in my brain like that. I write comedy more like you and I might speak. Maybe you don't use a foul word or two, maybe some people do, but in common vernacular, that's the way I write things, and then I sanitize it. So because in my life you couldn't run both sides. That's not the case today. Drew Carey is making $18 million a year as the host for Come On Down. Mr. Price is Right, $18 million a year. Now he'll go to a club in Vegas on a Friday night and make some pretty vulgar jokes. I'm not hating on his product and what he does. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that he gets afforded some leeway. I'm not sure that leeway was as available 20 years ago as it is now. I don't know if I'm willing to try. I don't know if I'm willing to dip my toe in that water. So the stuff, if you see me on stage, it's probably going to be clean. But knowing in the back of my mind, I got some other stuff that I wrote in here, not vulgar, but there might be a foul word or two, and it's really funny. I'm trying to get it cleaned up for you, though. Now, here's the thing about being on a cruise ship, too. You do one show with these people, you go to the bathroom, come back, have a little pizza. The same people are still sitting there waiting for you to... Now, you can't use the same jokes. Now I'm over here having to rewrite the set. Do it again on the third set, because that's the one, you know, you're supposed to be able to be a little stronger with your language and such. It's the same people sitting there with their kids. What, you think I got 3 sets here? No, I'm not Kevin Hart. Didn't come in here with 3 or 4 sets written to cover you. No, I got some funny, and you should go somewhere else. Like, sit in on the one show and then go check out the ice skating. Go to the casino. That's really what we want you to do. Oh, no, you can't sit here all night eating fries, going, be funny, boy. Some nights you don't have it. Some nights you can't jump on a stage and manufacture it. You just are missing. You're not funny that night. You know, like Dak Prescott, anywhere near the playoffs. You struggle. Those people have seen you struggle, and now for 4 days, they see you at the buffet, and they're like, he's the one that struggled so bad on stage. I felt bad for him. I had to pray for him when I got back in my room because he was trying to be funny, but Lord knows he wasn't funny. He was just bald, looked like a malnourished version of The Rock. It was a bad moment. I felt bad for him. Got big ears like a Doppler radar. I felt bad for just being stuck in that room. Being stuck with those people for days after you bomb, no, is not really comedy. It's more like consequences. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you subscribing at Bud Ford Comedy. Thanks for your likes, your shares, your comments. Have a great day.